right up down
Okay.
this area.
And that's what was in the notes or the discussion from last meeting around,
Yep.
there's a fence up that people were talking about.
Yeah, that reservoir right there,
Yeah.
there's a big fence that
Has
surrounds
to
it.
stay too.
Yeah.
Well, we should get started
Well,
because
because of the terrorists, right, Sandy?
The camera light is on, so I'm assuming we are
Recording, so.
broadcasting.
Very good.
Okay, calling to order. This is Tricia Dunham, Chairperson of Open Space Advisory Committee.
Ken Lish, Vice Chair.
Tracy Collar, committee member.
Joel White, committee member.
Just to note at this point, we're not at quorum yet before we go to staff.
Sandy Pennington, liaison.
Allison James, staff liaison.
Great. There's no one here for public comment, so we'll shift that down the agenda if someone arrives. We can open for that. Item number 3, updates and look ahead. Do you want me to hit the lights, Allison? Fun.
So what I have up here on the screen is the town center. And on September 28th, the developer did a presentation for the board and showed a modified block and street alignment and a new town square concept. And what I can do after tonight is email a web link to the presentation for the committee's review and for these documents so that you can take a look at these documents. Basically, the difference was that the town plaza, instead of being on this side, will now, or the concept is that it will be on this side. And this street has shifted over or become wider, and there aren't any homes along the park any longer in this concept. So let me make this a little bit
That was park
bigger.
number 1, is that parcel number 1 for the park?
2.
That was 2? Okay.
2.
That's right.
So if you look here, you can kind of see the difference of the shift of the plaza from this side here over to this side. And then these were homes that were abutting the park, which are no longer there. And so mainly the reason I'm showing this to you is just kind of a precursor to reviewing that final FTP, and that this concept was brought up at the September 28th meeting.
Why did they make those changes?
Well, the rationale is that this is BVI right here. From what I understood, I listened to the meeting today, and there's going to be potentially a coffee shop and a sporting goods store and a restaurant, and that since this is already being built, the flow would be a good flow here, and it's approximately, from the presentation, 1,000, I guess, yards from the park, about a 5-minute walk, from what I understood, and basically that the flow was better, and how the dominoes fall of this is already built, then building out from that initial building.
I can't see the key, but I'm guessing that green space means it's part of the park now. So what was going to be homes up on the upper part of the new map, is that just becoming more park then?
I think that this area, this road is being widened.
Okay.
The key difference regarding that, Allison, if you pull up the old one and go right by the park, before houses bordered the park, and so it was a nightmare to figure out how to drop kids off at the park and parking along the park, because you were behind those homes. So finally, we toyed with it a lot, and then our design concepts, who does a lot of our park design, said the problem is you have homes there. You need a street there if you want an accessible park frontage. And so the developer said, okay. And so that's the key difference is now you can park along the street and you can drop people off right at the park, et cetera, et cetera.
And that helps a lot of the parking problems.
Well,
Helps for drop-off. I don't know that it helps for parking.
it helps.
So are those not going to be parking spaces? It's just going to be a drop-off area?
No, it's going to be parking, as well as I understand it. Go to that top one now, that new one. So, see, that red thing is, I believe, this concept of the sports bar. And the problem, one of the problems that's going to be discussed is that available parking right to the west? Is that west in that map layout? Mm-hmm. Is that going to be bar parking? Or is it going to be park parking? And likewise along the street, because it's probably all first come, first serve. And so we'll have to address that. And then there are some other changes that were made there. So all the board has been given is a concept plan, and that is not an opportunity to really debate it.
Yeah.
So I really suggest that you guys maybe appoint somebody who's interested in this, or your leadership or whatever, when this PDA, it's a major amendment that's going to be coming forward, that you actually participate in those meetings.
Yeah, do we have an exact date when it's coming forward?
I don't know.
Did that get?
I think staff may know a whole heck of a lot more than the board does on this, but I don't know when it's going to come available. But in the near term, it's not a long way away.
Okay. Allison, if you can make sure we know if it comes through, when it would be, because we would want to weigh in on that and potentially have presence at the meeting as well. Great. Before we go forward on the next item, could the members that arrived announce themselves?
Sean Samuelson.
Fiona Boger.
Matt Morris.
Great. And just to note, now we have quorum. So that was the town center. Allison will let us know when those meetings are upcoming, and then we can get people to go to them and comment on them. Count the lights.
Do you mind if I ask a question about
No,
Town Center?
go right ahead, sorry.
I think I asked last month just for an update on the parks. Sandy, maybe do you have any knowledge on the status of where they're at?
No,
Okay.
no.
I also
No
have a
idea.
question. So the temporary road, it looks like they had made more permanent. Is that really still temporary?
Correct.
It is? Okay.
It just is more stable.
Oh, okay.
It was washing out. So they wanted to stabilize it.
All right.
But that's not going to be the road going in to long term. It moves, it
Correct.
shifts,
Yeah,
right?
it's
It
not going
shifts.
to be the permanent road.
Also, I had heard that the folks that are developing the land are also trying to, I don't want to say sell off, but basically try and see if there's any other development companies that are interested in developing the actual town center itself. This is from someone I know in development. They extended the offer to. I didn't know if they let the town know about that.
I am unaware,
Okay.
but I'm not the town. I did want to alert you guys to something that thus far you haven't weighed in on. Is there is a dispute over the buffer, and that is a OSAC in the OSAC bailiwick, the buffer between the town center and Waterford. And that was to have been done a certain way, and it appears it was done a different way, and that is currently in discussion about how to correct that issue. So I think it's well in hand among the interested parties at this point, but it just dawned on me about 30 seconds ago that you probably, if you hadn't come to a meeting, were not.
Do you know what the problem is? Is there less of a buffer than there was supposed to be, or is it?
Well, it depends how you measure less. If I, correct me, Allison, if I'm wrong here, it was supposed to be 250 feet wide, and some residents contend that it was to remain at its current height. And it was bulldozed flat. And so that is currently being discussed as to what the board approved versus what was in the grading plan and versus what actually happened. So it's in a state of flux right now.
So the issue is the height, not the
It appears
width?
to me that it's height. Is that accurate, Allison? Do you know the details?
Did that come up at the last meeting or the one before?
2 board meetings ago, I never miss, and I missed that particular discussion. But you can certainly go back and watch the board
we'll
meeting
go
2
back.
meetings ago.
My recollection, just when we discussed buffer, and Ken, you might remember more, I don't know that we ever talked height. We always talked
Width.
That's my recollection, but that's not to say that something wasn't approved. When it was approved, I'd have to go back and
Right.
look, but
Well, what
I
makes
believe our
us,
discussions at OSAC were really about the width of the buffering and.
That's my recollection as well.
right.
um,
Well, it's a complicated issue because apparently the terms were all spelled out in the annexation agreement when the land was annexed. And then you have PD and FDPs, so development plans, final development plans, and all this kind of stuff. So what's happening right now is to really read the letter of all of those documents and then figure out what needs to be done.
And Allison, just correct me if I'm wrong, I assume we can access all of that from the web page. Those are all stored on the web page, right?
I think the majority of
Them are, okay. If we don't
Yeah.
find something, we'll contact you to see if it's one of the ones that haven't been uploaded yet, or.
Well, you could really spend time.
Well, and then where this committee probably will choose to be involved in this is the interpretation of a natural landscaped buffer. And what exactly is that? If you've watched me at meetings, I live south of Colton. Our natural landscape buffer south of Colton has over time become unkempt, in my opinion. It's wild, however it grows. And is that the definition of a natural landscape buffer, or is that called native? And so that is something you may at some point wish to weigh in on as to what your belief is this should look like.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions for Town Center? Great. Count the lights.
So second year, we're going to do Count the Lights at Asti Park. It's a joint effort between Historical Committee and the Youth Committee and our Superior Youth Leadership Council. And it's going to be at Asti Park, December 5th, which is a Saturday, from 5 to 7. And there'll be a competition on counting the lights on the fire truck. And there'll be snacks, crafts, and hot cocoa. And you're welcome to come.
Just a note that my family and I, we attended the open house for the archaeology graduate students over at the mine, and I'll tell you, if they do it again, it was very interesting and well worth going over during it. They were showing all the new techniques they do in archaeology and then talking about the things that they had found. And my sons got to dig and find clumpers, which is coal that's already burned. It's very exciting for an 8- and 6-year-old. They loved it. So if they come around again, I don't know if they will. It might be worth folks attending. OSAC mission and goals, which I believe, do we have those on here now?
I have it in the file if you wanted to look at them as
Yeah.
far as the last.
Well, was anybody interested in reviewing them, or is it more just whether or not we can put them on the OSAC? Oh, perfect.
So the question at our last meeting was whether we could put them on the website, like Ken was talking about. And basically, the next step would be to send them to the board to ask to use and post them on the website.
And the red is the last ones that we added.
Correct.
Okay. Just
And if you recall, we made that one last tweak and submitted it, I guess it was April sometime. So just revisit that, send it to the board, and request to put it on the
Now-
website as our mission and goals.
We never received any feedback back from the board, did we? It just kind of went there and didn't get shot down, didn't get approved.
So maybe resubmit it and,
stating that we're going to have it uploaded to the website.
or
and-
ask.
Or
if it-
ask if
yeah.
it's possible, yeah. Or not stated, but I meant that that's our goal, is to
Right.
get it up on the website.
Can we just make a motion right now to do that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I know we have newer members who weren't involved, but we've spent months and months on these, tweaking every word, so I'm not sure we want to rope back in and doing that. So if we could have a motion, we can vote on it.
I make a motion to present the OSAC mission and goals to the board and request uploading to our website.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
I think that's unanimous, Allison, so if we could submit that in the next available packet that goes up. Excellent.
One last look ahead that is not on the agenda is the Stocking Run 5K. I don't know if everybody's familiar with it. It occurs on December 13th at 7:30 a.m. for packet pickup. And we do this in cooperation with Racing Underground. So if you wanted to enroll, you go to, Google Stocking Run 5K Racing Underground and register.
Where does that run take place?
It starts at Purple Park and it goes through the neighborhoods and ends back.
It does. It goes down
At
through the
Purple
neighborhoods and then cuts
It comes up by the
right,
North
yeah,
Pole
cuts
Superior
south for a
Elementary.
block, then down like another block, and then back along whatever road it is that goes like right by the creek path. Back up along there and then back by Purple Park and back down again.
Okay.
I'm doing it if everyone else is.
Yeah.
Are there typically vendors and stuff that show up before or after to?
Well, the Racing Underground has, their packets and it's really cool. They give you like jingle bells to wear and you get a red felt stocking filled with goodies. It's the stocking run, and people wear funny socks, and then they have snacks and stuff at the end of the race.
Yeah, it's not huge vendors, but usually Superior Running Club might have a little booth there as well, because they run it, and there might have been one or two other that I think Racing Underground lets come in with them. Item number 4, discussion on the 2016 work plan and review of the 2015, which we have in front of us. And then, Allison, you, also in front of us is the grid that sort of shows where we were on our items, if we completed them or started them or any of that. And our work plan review goes into the board in January. I just want to make sure, is that right? Is that when it comes up for them, just for folks to know?
These items that are started but not completed, how would I catch up on where we are and what the progress is on each one of those?
So mostly it's reading the minutes from
Okay.
previous meetings, and I'm trying to remember, when did we start recording them? June? July?
Yeah.
It was over the summer that there'll be links in that you can also watch if you'd like.
Okay.
Should we go over each of those to
Yeah.
decide whether or not we want to try to squeeze a little bit more in on it before the end of the year?
Are we talking the spreadsheet or the actual Word document?
Yeah, spreadsheet is a guide, and then we can delve into.
Yeah, I mean,
Right,
most of
yeah.
them are, they're the same, it's just the,
Less detail on the spreadsheet.
yeah, there's just more when we started it, or possibly, and if we started it or not, so.
So that first one is the number 7 on the first quarter. Develop a marketing strategy to publicize the web-based trail mapping for superior and regional trails. That effort kind of died.
What is a web-based trail mapping? Is that just posting the trails online, or what is that?
Trying to remember back to what our thoughts were when we added that. I think it was.
There was someone else who was doing it. Was it BOCO or someone was starting it, and we were going to parlay off what they were doing to try to get Superior's trails, I don't know, integrated with it, or what our initial plan was.
Boulder Mountain Bike Alliance has a big press in getting mountain bike and hiking trails mapped.
Okay.
I'm not sure about Boulder County. It's
Can't remember, to be honest.
the Superior Trails border Boulder County trails, and the regional connectors connect through to them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not aware of any Boulder County mapping activity, but it may be work in progress. I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
And
I don't
Louisville
recall.
was also doing their project for re-signing and
their wayfinding project.
their wayfinding project for their trails as well, I think, was also feeding into this a little bit.
I think there was also just a general feeling out there that there wasn't a lot of awareness within the community that we had all those resources out there, and we were trying to just put it out so more people knew about it. So more or less just a publicity campaign rather than actually creating maps. Honestly, I think even though we didn't necessarily put it under that heading when we did it, I think we've kind of been doing this. I mean, we did it Trails Day. We talked about the mapping. We did it at Chili
Chili
Fest.
Fest, yep.
I mean, we've actually done quite a bit of publicity about this.
Passport program also.
Yeah, the passport program is huge.
Yep.
Yeah.
And there is stuff on the website.
Yeah.
That thing about something, monitor my run, or something where you could actually go
Yeah,
on.
Map My Run.
Matt Myron.
What is it called?
Map My Run.
Map My Run, yeah.
I think it was also, the website was being redone, so it was making sure accurate things were getting up on the website as well.
Yeah. I think for the most part, we can probably say that this is completed. We've put a decent amount of effort into this.
So there's a lot of maps if you go to Parks and Rec Department, and then Parks, Trails, and Open Space, and then you end up into some different regional trail information, trailhead maps.
And I know the sign out front always says, like, for more trail information, because it's very, like, I see that every single day, so it's out there if people want it.
One of the reasons that I put started on that is I knew that we had worked on the passport program, National Trails Day, and I knew this was on the website, so.
I'm not sure we need to do much more for it for the year. Is everyone
No,
okay
I-
with moving it to completed?
I think so, yeah.
Beautiful.
We did skip over number 3 in first quarter.
Oh, I missed that, sorry.
So trail links to Highway 28, right. Trying to, so I know that there's been interest to connect out to 128, but I also know there's private property on where people might think that they can connect out to 128, but I think has been an interest to get things to go that way as well.
Do we need to do more with this, considering all we have spent on our prioritization of our upcoming trails?
I don't necessarily think so. And then I know some of us, I know you definitely have, Tracy. I've asked to be on. They haven't responded back yet to the new Rocky Mountain, Rocky Flats grouping to get information as well.
Rocky Mountain Greenway? Is that, or?
No.
It's the actual
There's a
Rocky Flats Stewardship Council, I think is what
Yes.
it's called. I can look it up.
So they now have I don't know if it's monthly or quarterly meeting, but you can get the information mailed to you. I've requested it. I haven't received back that I've been accepted, but I don't know if that's true or not as far as just being on the email list, or if I'll just get it the next time they send something.
Were you notified as well? We have 2 board members, Principal Joe Sorelli and then his backup, Chris Hansen, who attend all the Stewardship Council meetings.
Oh, nice.
And they're looking for residents of the region to serve these at-large,
I did see that. in the
fill
email.
these at-large positions.
And the Rocky Flats Stewardship Council, is that what they go to? Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
That's what
I saw
It
information.
may be, the deadline may have already passed. I don't know what that deadline was.
I definitely saw the call for people to do it. Just personally, I couldn't add something else on the thing, onto my plate, but I did see coming through that they were looking for at-large members from the surrounding, Superior, I think Broomfield,
Arvada.
Arvada.
Yeah.
And who did you say is on it, that attends those meetings?
Joe
already?
Sorelli, he's
Okay,
a
yep,
trustee, and then
yep.
Chris Hansen, a
Okay.
trustee, is his backup. Yeah, yeah.
So I think to your point, Tracy, I think this is one that's been on there, but then there's been concern about how much we want to get involved with the Rocky Flats and how much, should it still be a priority that we directly be working for that area?
Gotcha, yep.
Or if we would just focus more on the trails we prioritized.
I think this will kind of work itself. I think this will kind of work itself out as well when we kind of move to the latter topic of trying to discuss the trails plan and how fast we want to move on certain trails. Because I know that the trails leading out there are on the plan. I'm not sure. I can't remember exactly where they are on the list. But as we decide how fast we want to try to get those trails built, we can more or less cross that bridge as we itemize what we're going to try to accomplish for the year. So there's not really a lot we could have done for this year anyway, because we didn't
Well,
actually build anything.
there are two distinct issues that intersect at some point in time, because, and that's why I brought up this Rocky Mountain Greenway or Greenbelt Greenway, I think. Sean, you send all the info out on it. There is this push from at the federal level. Ken Salazar was a former Secretary of the Interior who's from the area, was a big proponent of linking Rocky Mountain Arsenal, another toxic waste Superfund thing, and Rocky Flats, and building this huge greenway. And the reason I brought it up is, to me, that's sort of in your ballpark to comment at the appropriate time as developments arise with that matter, because I am under the understanding that eventually that would link up with any trail that was built to 128.
Yep.
And so, you know, I think that's one of those things that as staff becomes aware of anything on that, as people monitor the newspapers and such, because it periodically is in the paper, to make sure the whole committee knows.
Well, is that whole 128 issue something that we should be getting input from the town on, as to if we should ever even look at connecting those, or should we just let it lie at the present time? And
I think you've chosen to let it lie, both you and ProStack, by how low you put it on your priority list. Ken, you seem to be looking at the list.
No,
How low
I'm
is
not,
it?
but
Okay.
I remember it was actually a lot higher on ProStack's list.
It's not high on your list either, is it?
No, it's not high on our list, but it was higher on ProStack's, if I recall correctly.
Well, I'm actually shocked in reading this again that it was ever in a first quarter to-do list here. I don't quite remember it being there.
I think that was kind of a holdover from prior years, because we've been discussing it for quite some time.
Yeah. So to me, it seems like it's a lower priority on both trails plans. So for this to be where it is seems inappropriate to me, because you have not made it a priority. So I would drop it off. I wouldn't even
Yeah,
discuss
so
it.
we really didn't do
Yeah.
anything in 2015, and I don't know that we would have it, certainly not in the first quarter, or
Right.
even as a separate item pulled out of the trails plan.
I do just want to note, I remember from Chili Fest, I'm not sure if we ever tallied up what the priorities were for people from that. But I got a lot of people to respond to that question, like mini questionnaire thing we had. And I know a lot of people put a lot of emphasis on the west-south trail. I think it was like G or H. I can't remember what we numbered it, but a lot more people, like just the public, put an emphasis on wanting that trail than we had put in our. That was consistently like the number one of every single person was like, that one would be awesome. So just something to think about. I know we didn't place it very high, but a lot of the community did.
was that a connection to 128?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was like along the
Parallels
west side of
McCaslin.
McCaslin, whichever one went right down there.
Isn't that
Like
where
I said,
the-
I think it was G or H of the sheet that we had labeled the trails.
I think the reason it's low on the priority list for everybody is it's probably not achievable, given
private property,
resources and topography, and it's going to take some perfect conditions to all come together for that to happen. So it really would be difficult to achieve. So if you move it up the priority list, you're going to have to really figure out how to make the confluence of all those positive things to make it happen.
I think it is I think those connecting trails, though, are a high priority just for folks who want longer hikes or mountain biking, or something that gives them more distance to do that over. So, but I agree with you that I think there's a lot of things that have to come into play to make it. But if you had one, you can see if you had one that went out, then you could get out to those 93 trails, and you could.
You could, but I think that it's important that people are educated on all of that political stuff that would
Mhm.
come into play if that trail did connect to 128, and some people have health concerns, and et cetera, so.
It's true, if there's no trail, you can't link it up with the
Exactly.
greenway.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Right? You have to stay on the road then.
Yes. Okay. So then moving down, since we did 3, and it looks like we're going to move that off to a lower item for 2016, we then go down to number 8, the public outreach program and annual education events, which we also have in our packet, the programs that we did for both 2014 and 2015 at this point. And I think we've gotten through them all, right, Allison? There's nothing left in this month or December for education with Ashley, correct?
No, there's nothing left. In our next item, I have some information, so if you want to wait to the next item, or if you want to talk about that.
I think we want to wait. I think we just say
we'll
this
wait.
is complete.
Yeah, we'll move, yep.
And we can just switch that one over from started to complete, I think.
Yep, for this year.
Yeah.
And then it will be next year's. For the second quarter, the second quarter is generally when we do our budget because it's due to the town. The town starts really working on it in the summer, right? Staff does, pulling it together, and then it comes forth to the board in October. Is that correct? Yeah.
Yes.
So I think that we had made our recommendations for this year, because that was the $10,000, right? And that went through. And then the update of the 5-year trail plan, I think we finally finished, right, last meeting? I think we finally did that one over. And then the educational opportunities for committee and staff, I think both you guys attended COSA, right? No, Ken attended COSA.
Yeah.
You did not?
I did not.
Okay.
I was working on a grant.
Oh, yes. COSA is the Colorado Open Space
Association.
Yes. And they run usually a conference in the September timeframe that we hope to get at least one committee member or one staff member, or both, a couple of slots that we try to get out there. It's always, the timing of it's been difficult a little bit for committee members and even staff. Just the September timeframe seems to be a busy timeframe for folks, but it's been interesting the last couple of years, so I think we would keep that on for days. We did our National Trails Day event, and we did work with ProStack. One of the items that came out of working with ProStack is that we want to collaborate earlier next year and more frequently through some of the things.
Would you want to move that to first quarter?
I think that we probably would move that to first quarter, just because given the timing of trying to get their folks together and our folks together, the earlier we start, the better.
I'm sorry, we want to take off the Highway 128? I have a question on that.
Yeah, I think it all rolls into the overall
Trails
trail plan.
Yep. And then the revisit. We did that always in the second quarter. Boulder County is looking for our open space acquisition priorities, and we do that also with the trail. Is it also when we do one of the trails to them, or no?
Yes, it's the same time, so we'll want to move that one up also.
No. All right.
Which one?
For the third quarter for this year, we did do, we had someone go to COSA, and then the Hodgett Harris Reservoir, we opened, there was the event in August that opened it officially. And then the A, B, and C, which we were doing underneath that, seems that it's been put on hold for a while. There's other
So we-
constraints around it.
We discussed it, at least B, the development of the viewing access, and I think that just kind of fell off because everyone realized that's probably not a great spot for the viewing area.
Where we basically, both committees, you and ProStack, which have an opinion on this, said that little corner of viewing access by Saddlebrook off Rock Creek Parkway is,
Not ideal.
yeah, pretty nothing. And that we'll wait until the private property there develops, at which point, hopefully there will be a memory, an institutional memory, that we can put in that PD, some boardwalk or something along the edge of that property to make
Yeah,
it
the
more
south end of
substantial.
that, yeah.
And more substantial and more centrally located to being able to see something.
I know someone did mention Audubon Society.
Yeah, I had.
Speaking with them, is that something we should do, or should we wait until later, or to get more native birds in the area to make it a little more attractive? And I don't know.
I don't know how we would.
I think you've probably got your plate full enough, unless there's somebody with a real keen interest in that.
Okay. I know that when I drive by it, and I know from people who live in Saddleburg, it is, birds are migrating or.
Restoring itself.
Yeah, it's restoring itself. So it's almost, in a good way, probably that is somewhat inaccessible and being left alone and sort of naturally progressing. But it's always looking full to me now, comparatively to when you used to drive by it.
Would we like to, do we want to keep it or move it or remove it? Any thoughts?
I think we would remove it and just, it's not, I think it's, as Sandy said, it's dependent on that property developing, so I don't.
Well, I think you can maybe leave the first part of it, monitor Hodgson Harris Reservoir regeneration. It's somewhat in its beginning stages, so I see no harm to you monitoring it.
At that point, we'd probably want to switch that over to the ongoing
Yeah,
heading instead of
Header,
third
right,
quarter,
yeah.
right?
right.
Yeah, we could move it up as an ongoing event.
Sean, somebody was about to say something.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'd be happy to reach out to the National Audubon Society in Boulder and ask them if they'd be interested in perhaps putting some bird perches or whatever.
Yeah,
out
I
in the-
suggest you coordinate with staff. We always have to
Okay.
coordinate.
And, if that was something that the group wanted to do, we would have to get board approval, but as you know, it's kind of a.
Process.
Like, if we wanted to reach out to them to see if they had any interest in looking at the area?
If it's something that the committee would
Okay.
work on, they would get approval through the board to work on.
What are we picturing? Are we just reaching out to them to say, hey, do you want to do anything over here, or what? How does that
Well,
work?
number one, you ask for general interest,
Mhm.
and kind of give them a background of what we have available, and what we represent, and kind of go from there. I'm sure they have a budget as well.
Well, and some of that may be done. That's the reason staff always has to be involved, because this being a BOCO and a town project, BOCO is quite up on these initiatives, where we are, we may not have done anything with Audubon, but they may have, that kind of thing. So I think,
It sounds like there would definitely need to be a little bit of fact-finding first before we present anything to the
Right.
board. So Sean can certainly take the first steps and coordinate.
well, I
with-
think he has to coordinate
With Allison.
with Allison.
and then-
Yeah.
I
Go
think
from
there
there.
was something about this area from Boulder County, and I wasn't sure if there was a lot of interest in it, and I think it was prevalent in that one of the trails reports, I seem to recall.
Mhm.
But I can look it up. Yeah.
and report back.
Okay.
And so now we're in our fourth quarter. Review open space management plan, which we started last month, discussions of our 2016 work plan, potential wildlife enhancement, encouragement, opportunities, and then, of course, the raptors.
Does anyone have any recollection of how we were going to work on enlarging wildlife corridors? I remember talks about elk and.
The pronghorn antelope.
Yes.
The pronghorn antelope, yes.
But how was that going to happen? Anyone know?
So that
Nope.
is, I don't know that we've had how it would happen. I mean, in my mind, the only way I could think of it happening is we would have to reach out to like Colorado Wildlife Rangers kind of thing and just figure out, you know,
Yeah. Or
is there
BOCO
anything,
first,
or
because that's all
BOCO, yeah.
theirs.
I mean, it would.
Well, it's sort of a policy question, guys, you know, with those, what were they called, pronghorns?
Yeah. I
Uh,
love that you remember.
I
that.
remember when this came, the board became, I think in your annual meeting, your annual dinner, it came up. And you do have to be careful because, you know, do you want them in your backyard? You know, so these are not things you take on very lightly. And I think we dropped out the pronghorned antelope after that annual dinner.
Yes, people were frightened of the pronghorn antelope. Though, the reason why they came up is the grasses in the open space are actually their natural habitat, so.
Very prevalent in Wyoming, but never see them south of Fort Collins.
Yeah.
So,
There was,
Yeah.
before I joined the committee, I remember this was brought up, like, this was roughly the first meeting that I showed up in, like this November meeting 2 years ago. I remember we were talking about that at my meeting, and they were saying that there was some type of study done that specifically cited that area, saying this could be something we'd like to reintroduce, which is why we specifically cited that back then. I couldn't tell you what study that was from, who was behind it, or if there was anybody who had the knowledge back then
Yeah.
to even enact that.
It's definitely been something that's sort of carried on each work plan. But you're right, it did come from several years ago when people wanting to reintroduce the natural.
Several years ago, this committee was in major league transition. And so if this is a thing that seems a little odd, you can just feel free to drop it.
It is odd, but I love it. I think it's
Okay.
fascinating.
I'm not, if you like it, perhaps it
But-
needs to be pursued.
Does it apply to the town of Superior open space, or is this just a BOCO thing?
Or is it just a state thing of animals migrate where they migrate and, you know?
Well, certainly more research can be done, the
Right.
same as with Audubon, as
Yeah.
to,
So I would be happy to do that. Who could I contact? I mean, I
well,
could
I
go through
think
Allison
again,
and just like.
yeah, talk to
Everything goes through
staff.
Allison.
All right.
Yeah,
Let's do that.
what we don't, and this is nothing with committee members, it's the same with trustees. We find it problematic to call directly to these places, right? And sort of insert ourselves in what may be an ongoing discussion, et
Yep.
cetera, et cetera. So it's just politically smart to,
But I think having an
Sounds great.
understanding, if you reach out, Tracy, you
Yeah.
through Allison, of what sort of could come through the area. I will say just a few weeks ago, or might have even be like 2 months ago, I was quite shocked to learn that we lived in bear country, that the wildlife rangers consider everything west of I-25 as bear country. So I was like, oh, you know, I always think of it as being more west than us,
Right,
but I
but
was
it's
like,
here.
but it's here, so I think maybe even an understanding of it,
Yeah.
of what could show up, because I think you're right. Might be, oh, we introduced this, and then, gee, if we bring some nice dinner down and repopulate, other things might come looking for said
if they eat
dinner.
rabbits, I would like them in my yard.
Yeah.
Daily camera.
Yeah,
I just
was
saw
up
a
hiking.
skunk the other day, right here,
Yeah.
right by Whole Foods, which is fantastic. I love it.
I was up on the Dowdy Loop Trail a couple of Fridays ago, and I was like, it would be so exciting on the one hand to see a bobcat, but then on the other, it would not be
Yeah.
exciting at all.
I saw
Better
one
than a mountain lion?
along Highway 128.
See,
Yeah.
I mean, it's all, they're so.
Right at dusk, saw it for a brief moment, ran
Yeah.
right in front of me.
You know, I would love to see a tornado too. But
Yeah, I know. Well, it was one of those things. I
In
saw,
Oklahoma,
we
I've
saw,
seen those too.
we saw deer out on our hike and things like that, so that was nice. But I was like, gee, you'd like to see some things, but then really not, because then it would be very scary.
From a big distance.
Yeah.
Would the group like to put the potential wildlife enhancements on ongoing, or do we want a quarter, or what's the?
I think instead of discuss potential wildlife enhancement, maybe we would want to change it to just understanding the local wildlife before we'd get to enhancing anything. That might, so more of just an education piece for ourselves of what would be out there.
I think it'd be good under ongoing, though.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
we could move it under the ongoing of,
You could even have a presentation from those, though, because they've got people who
mhm.
know this stuff.
That would be great.
Oh, that would be,
Well, should we move that to like first quarter then, if that's something we want to keep fresh in our minds and
we could move it to
forward?
fourth quarter of something that we'd like, maybe a presentation in that February or March timeframe from BOCO. So, and then down at the bottom or at the top of the work is we have our ongoing, which is always acquisition of level 3 property. Our annual joint meeting with the town board, which I think usually hits about January.
Is that
That's-
something we should just move up to the first quarter rather than ongoing?
Yeah, we could move that up to the first quarter. The continue to pursue regional collaboration. So we had that this year. We met with Louisville's Open Space Board. They're just named a little differently, and OSAB. And then you can get on the list and attend Boulder County's open space meetings. I don't know if we'd want to collaborate more than that. And then I don't know if this coming year we want to reach out to Broomfield or anywhere else that borders on the other sides, or if we were okay with just, that can just stay as an ongoing thing and then determine which groups we want to reach out to.
I think Broomfield would be nice, but it's just
Mhm.
an idea.
I'm assuming they have some type of open space.
They do. When the 36 Bike Regional Connector was opening, I talked with a woman who is in charge of their open space.
Okay.
And she handed me a map and talked about what their ongoing projects were. And they have a significant map of what's current, what's planned, and what's under review. So they're pretty active in it.
Is that online?
I don't know. I have a hard copy of the map. I assume it's online, but I haven't verified that.
That might be worth investigating to see exactly what we intersect with their open space.
Their whole open, everybody's open space plan and all that is online. The Louisville, so you could find out quite a bit just by looking at the map.
Yeah. But I like leaving it unless anybody wants to move it to a particular quarter. I think it's a good ongoing thing, because we got to, figure out, we can go do the research, and then it will take our staff with their staff to figure out a date and time. I mean, I think we started, I want to say, Allison, you started in like January last year, and then I can't remember when we actually met. It was closer to the summer. So it took several months to kind of get that all to work out, given both sets of agenda and people's schedules.
And I think we also met early for our committee and then later with theirs
Yeah.
last, or this year.
Yeah.
So it feels like we have three So we have Boulder, Louisville, Broomfield that we probably want to
Mhm.
coordinate with. Should we, as a group here, try to meet with one each quarter? 3 out of our 4 quarters? And just make that an annual goal?
So specifically, are you saying Boulder County or Boulder City or both?
I think they're
Boulder
both.
County.
Boulder County, because
Boulder.
Boulder City, yeah, it does, I think it's, everything around us is Boulder County, not
Yeah.
Boulder City. The city limits stop at, I don't even know, Cherryvale or something like that, so.
Hmm.
The county property starts at 66th and Marshall Road and then goes east from there. On the other side of 66 is Boulder City property, open space.
66th, okay.
There's also the Boulder County Open Space. What's that officially called, do you know what that's called? But in past years, a member of OSAC
It's
was
POSAC,
also,
isn't it?
huh?
POSAC, P-O-S-A-C?
Yeah, I get
Yes.
those emails, yeah.
And he went to all the meetings, a member of, and he was on POSAC, I think, as well. So that might be I think anybody can attend, there are open meetings, et cetera. And then eventually, as he got more and more involved, he was actually officially appointed to that group. So that is clearly something out there that somebody on the committee can choose to be sort of the liaison with, that person who attends those meetings reporting back, or you could rotate attendance at those meetings or choose not to attend those meetings. But that is a way for you to really be more attuned to what Boulder County is doing on an ongoing basis, is just attending those meetings.
So I think that does bring up one that I had sort of written down, that we might want to sort of add officially to our work plan, or at least discuss, that we do have town board meetings that we want to cover with all of the town space. We're interested in the Rocky Flats things, we're interested in, what Boulder County is doing for its open space committees. Then if we had these liaisons of Louisville and Broomfield, the committee commitment is at least once a month, and then some, emails or things like that, but that's probably going to expand, how much do people want to expand their roles to cover these other initiatives or places that we want people at?
One idea also might be to start thinking about volunteering and like putting some type of schedule down and having, individuals sign up for dates. So if there is something on an agenda somewhere or a meeting somewhere that comes up during a month, say that person is on that month or something like that.
Mm-hmm. And then one of the things I think we've done this year as well has increased our own presence at even just town events. We do our own with National Trails Day, but then we did Chili Fest, Arbor Day, and there might be others that come up that we would want to do, as well as some of the educational events that we've run with the town.
I think it's very appropriate in this to commit to Chili Fest, to Arbor Day. Those are 2 different times of year, one April-ish and
April,
one October-ish.
yep.
So you don't have to overwhelm yourself.
Mhm.
But, ProStack's always at 4th of July. So, if you feel like you could share a booth with them, et cetera, or, do you want to have your own booth?
Yeah, no, definitely, I
I'm
think
not sure if
that
it's a city limits.
that's
Boulder
been
City
one of
open
the,
space owns this side, the open space, then the county picks up here.
yeah, that's definitely been something we've wanted to increase. And I think something we would also put on our agenda when we try to meet with them first quarter and do more collaboration is looking at those opportunities where we can share a booth. Not only just with them. I know, at the Chili Fest, it was nice. We did share a booth with them, and then next to us was the recycling, committee, and it just helps, on some of these events, because people go away and things like that, that if, if we're in a shared sort of advisory committee tent, we can help each other out. And, even if someone's not there, we can hand out information about different groups and.
Yeah, I would actually suggest, rather than just moving up this working collaboratively with ProStack to the first quarter, you actually reword it. Because it seems to me like what was discussed is you want to meet early in the first quarter with ProStack to develop a plan of collaboration regarding trails, X, Y, and Z, whatever those are. There were reasons to meet with them regarding, and you maybe don't need to even specify it regarding items of common interest or common response, where committee responsibilities overlap.
Does anybody want a wordsmith?
That was always Mike's role as the. Mike was always.
Joel, that means de facto it's your role.
Great. Welcome to the board.
Yeah, welcome to the board. Here's the keyboard.
That's right. So was that Joel unanimously?
I heard no motion.
I mean, we can keep it simple and just say something like meet with ProStack to develop a collaboration plan related to common interests.
Yeah,
Like, just-
great. Just say that. Allison, I think we've got it. Say it again, Ken. Meet with.
Meet
Pro-
with ProStack to develop a.
Early in the first quarter.
Yeah, so we'll just bring it up to the first quarter afterwards. So meet with ProStack
Okay.
to develop a collaboration plan related to common interests.
Collaboration plan for the year.
That works.
For the year related to
Relating to
I
common
went
interests.
backwards, but I can move that up.
Yeah, that does it.
Okay. And we wanted to move that up to first quarter.
Yeah. That was less painful than it normally is.
Committee writing is not my favorite.
I play the KISS rule. Keep it simple, stupid.
All right. So we'll move that one up. Okay.
So if we-
Also, I wanted to, we have two new members at the end here, Fiona and Joel, both whom when interview for this spot, Fiona, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but Joel's more recent in terms of an interest in a volunteer effort for trail maintenance. And I don't want that to get lost by not being on this plan. If it's not on this plan, you can't do it this year. So maybe the two of you need to discuss your thoughts with the rest of the committee to see if the rest of the committee is interested in those initiatives.
Sure. I mean, one of the things that I talked about when I interviewed with the city board was about how I use the trails all the time, the crusher paths around town, the gravel paths, and I see, especially with how many large rain events we seem to have had in the last few years, how there's some things that I look at every time I go over and think, man, some PVC pipe and 3 or 4 hours worth of work, we could fix this where it doesn't continue to wash out, some things like that. And that's one of the things I think, given a limited budget, you can always find volunteers. I do a lot of volunteer hours with trail work with Boulder County and with the city of Boulder. It's not uncommon that we can get 20 to 30 people to show up for a Boulder City trail work event on a Thursday night after work. I don't think it's out of the question to think that we could get, at least a group of 5 to 10 to work with somebody from the city of Superior to fix some of these problem areas that continue to pop up. I think that's an easy way to solve some of these things is with volunteer hours versus budget money.
And this seems like a good one to collaborate with ProStack on too, because they've said the same thing,
I think, Sean, you brought this up as well, trying to use one of our, not necessarily National Trails Day, but one of the
No.
volunteer.
National Service.
National
Yeah, I had
Service
3
Day.
different events potentially that we could use as volunteer opportunities.
I think if you combine that too with trying to get maybe like later elementary school kids, middle school kids, high school kids. I know at least when I was in middle school and high school, they had like, you could pledge to do like 70 hours community service and, you know, you'd get a gold star or something at the end of the year that you completed that. And I'm not sure if any of the schools in the area have that same kind of program, but I think putting like middle school aged, high school aged kids to work under the leadership and guide of someone like you who's had that experience and kind of posing it as like an educational type volunteer experience, I think you could get a lot of kids to help you with that.
I believe that Monarch does have a service requirement for their students, for their volunteers. My kids aren't old enough yet in that grouping, but I believe I've heard people talk about that. And we have the Youth Leadership Council, the Superior
Yeah.
Youth Leadership Council as well, that has been, they came and helped us on Trails Day, which was very nice, and had.
There are events in town that our volunteer coordinator and pros, Parks, Recreation, Open Space, do that is outdoor oriented and trail oriented. And so some of that occurs, of what you were saying, but I saw what you guys were talking about, and Sean, you as well. It seemed to me it was more adult
Yeah.
manpower and woman power, adult power to get out there and do this. Whereas some of these other events, they're more geared naturally to you know, children, like cleaning up the corridor, the Coal Creek corridor, that was one of them.
National Day of Service.
Yeah, where they collected, you know, however many bags of trash, et cetera, et cetera. So I thought I saw this one just a little bit different in scope. Who comes
Typically-
to the events you do in Boco? Is it a family-oriented thing?
It's usually all adults, with the exception of every now and then we'll have, you know, a teenage child with a parent, but it oftentimes, trail building, trail repair often has significant tools, you know, hammers and pickaxes and McLeod type tools. I don't think you want a bunch of 7-year-olds with those.
We also have youth corps opportunities where they work on some of the trails in town that have had problems. So every
Sure.
year we have a contract with Boulder County Youth Corps where they do, you know, tasks like that as well.
But to Sandy's point, as far as an item to add to the work plan, is it, you know, is it like create, maintain a volunteer program for trail maintenance? Like, is that what we?
A volunteer, develop a
Develop.
volunteer trail maintenance initiative. It could just be period, develop a volunteer trail maintenance initiative.
Just-
If that captures, does that capture it, Joel?
It does. I mean, really, my thinking is, I mean, if you go out on any nice Saturday afternoon, you see hundreds of runners and bikers and people walking. I know most of those people would give back an hour to, you know, to have things fixed or improved upon.
Yeah. And I monitor those Boulder County volunteer opportunities also, and they're always completely full. They actually post a limit, and that limit gets filled up almost instantly for all the projects. At the COSA conference, I sat in on the Jefferson County presentation where they talked about their volunteer program, and one of the big things that they really highlighted was that you need to make sure you have the right clear goals and the right leader out there to make sure it's clear and obvious what needs to happen, and that they can more or less dictate that things are going correctly and being built. I'm guessing, Joel, you've seen that when you're out with Boulder County.
Yeah, absolutely. It's usually a very specific piece of trail
Exactly.
that's going to be replaced or repaired or added onto.
My question is, do we have any of that type of knowledge in-house? And so we could do that, we wouldn't have to contract out.
Well, we have a new volunteer coordinator on staff this year, and she's the liaison with the Youth Leadership Council. And that's what she does. The other thing, like you were saying, I've been to some trainings on retaining volunteers and things like that. And one of the really important things is you make sure that people that are interested in a specific task are doing those specific tasks and not given something that they're completely not interested in. So,
Would that person have like the knowledge to be able to say, this is how we are going to go and fix this trail, this is the proper way this trail should have been built, or this is what needs to be
Or
done?
that would come out of the parks.
They wouldn't. The volunteer coordinator would only get the volunteers.
Right, they
but
would
we
build- they
have
would
on
get the infrastructure
staff
there.
the knowledge. I mean, Patrick, isn't that his job? And
Matt Rarick, our
Matt Rarick.
superintendent.
Okay, so they
do
have that.
Yeah.
So we have
Perfect.
staff
Yeah.
that have built.
Yeah. But to your
Trails.
point that we don't give 15 people pickaxes and
Right.
not tell them what to do with them.
They certainly need clear instruction, otherwise grades are compromised and things can ultimately end up worse.
Yes.
You could also make your goal investigate and potentially develop a program. You know, because you are at just the beginning stages here, but I frankly don't see any reason why, if there are enough interested adults, that we wouldn't want to do this. Especially if it does save money. Sometimes, I think what you found out, Ken, that you reported on is uncorralled energy can cost
It's
the town
less,
money.
Yeah, it's less help than
Yeah.
it's worth. Yeah. They more or less said during the presentation, the bottom line was that you need to make sure you have the right people out there supervising it to make sure that things happen the way they're supposed to, because otherwise.
And that's part of the reason that Boulder County caps theirs as well.
Exactly.
They'll have 3 trail leaders with 30 people so that one can kind of keep an eye on a group of 10 at any given point.
Yeah. So and that led to the challenge for them of making sure they actually had the resources within their own staff, time-wise even, just to be able to get out and do it. Just because, I mean, that can be time-consuming to plan it, go out and execute it, and whatnot.
So I've added that up to the first quarter, because I assume we'd want to do that in the winter months, and then by spring,
Have a
early
plan.
summer, have something in place if it was going to be that.
What about your idea of further doing the liaisons? Do you want to address that later? But I thought that was great.
Yeah, so I think this was something we would want to do out, and I spelled potentially wrong.
I'll fix it, don't worry.
Okay. It went quicker to one than the other, but, so this, I think, is what we want to do with the town, but I think to the thing that I was bringing up earlier is how we want to manage our own volunteer hours and making roles for us for the coming year, and how we want to do that and make sure we align with people's interests and time availability.
Do you just want to put that somewhere on our plan, or do you have a plan to address it later? I just don't want it to get lost. I thought that was great.
I guess we would add it to our plan. I don't know if it's first quarter, if it goes into ongoing, how we want to.
Will it get lost if we put it in ongoing? I mean, all the other things in ongoing are.
Or should we look at it that in January, we usually hold our leadership election, and should that also be part of it? So hold leadership election and,
Discuss additional
Volunteer
roles.
schedule.
yeah, discuss. Okay. That way, so it would be in our January grouping.
Hold a leadership election, semicolon.
Discuss. Liaisons, I don't know, or volunteer.
Additional committee member roles related to community outreach.
It's not really community outreach,
you
isn't
said
it? Is it,
community.
it's attendance.
Right.
or should we just leave it at additional committee roles, and then I can do this?
Do you want to
like,
say commit to member attendance at related meetings? Commit to member attendance at related meetings and events.
That sound good? Does that sort of get us what we're looking at? And then, I mean, so we're really at the end of this year. You'll let us know, and we'll cover as best as we can anything that's coming up in the December board meeting. We have one more board meeting this month, right? Or does it shrink down with the holiday?
One in November, left in November, and one in December.
Just one, not two in December, right? So there's two potential board meetings that might be covered in the next, until we get to January. And we go before the board, I think OSAC is before the board meeting falls in, right?
What does this discuss additional committee roles mean? Is that going to come out, or is it going to stay in?
I don't, it can go either or. Okay. All right. We just do that. Okay. And just for the newer folks to know what the two, or the sort of three positions that kind of come up for election is the chair, the vice chair, and then we have sort of a
Alternate vice chair.
alternate vice chair.
I think it was recommended that you return to the charter and actually just do a chair and a vice chair.
Okay.
The alternate vice chair threw people for a loop this year.
So we would have the two elected, and then.
I think that was
the other
also
piece.
a bigger deal a year or two ago when we had like
Yeah.
2 or 3 people total showing up at every meeting, and that was it. And
Right.
it's
Right.
never leadership. And
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, we have much more.
We're over the hurdle.
The availability of,
Good job.
of having quorum, yeah, make it has increased over this past year, so it's nice. All right. So we sort of went through, is there anything that we want to get added to 2016 that's not on here that we haven't added yet? Other things we want to move around? This started as sort of what we did in 2015. Is there anything we want to say, take it off, move it out, add something else?
Yeah, I'd like to, we have monitor progress of Shan Shan. I think we're beyond monitor at this point. I think we need to be a little more progressive on that and what we want to do with that. I think we need to reach out to historical. I think we need to start making plans as to how we want to see this trailhead developed. We've talked a few times about it, but I think now we need to start taking action on it. I mean, it's been a year at this point, hasn't it? So I think we need to make some strides in that regard.
How long is it before the structure can come down? 3 years?
So we got 2 left.
Yeah. So 2 years left on that. We did kind of hear back from Boulder County that they're not as interested in putting a bigger trailhead there, so that's been sort of their take on it for right now. I mean, mostly, they generally have just been interested or focused on flood mitigation. That, I don't know that they've completed everything yet, but they didn't seem, I thought I heard from Patrick, as open, they kind of think we have Colton down there. So just something to think about. I agree with you, I think we need to move more towards it, but it might end up being more, I think at one point we were thinking they would be more collaborative
You
with
could,
us.
though, on ongoing, continue to consider a potential trailhead at Shan Shan. You still make it somewhat iffy. I mean, it's got to go through a lot of hoops, but it doesn't hurt understand that this work plan has a lot of goals, and, I mean, lot of utility, and one of them is to tell the board what you're thinking, yeah, right? So when you have that dinner with us, it's here, and it prompts discussion about it. So these things percolate slowly, right? But if it's not on here, it's not going to be mentioned at all.
What is it that we're referencing? I'm not familiar. Oh, here's
So you know it's right up the hill
The
that.
dugout house in the
Basically,
hill.
right in here
Okay.
is where the Shan Shan property is that the town bought for open space. It's the corridor between
When you go up the
flat
hill.
field
Okay.
and up the hill to the business park.
Understood.
Yeah.
So one of our thoughts when we were doing that, Joel, is that we would sort of mimic another trailhead with Town Center coming in and, you know, so right now when you look across, it's all, well, you see Boulder Valley Ice now, but it's when you see it in the future that everything that's gonna be there, that a trailhead there would be nicer, you know, so two accesses in kind of off McCaslin, one being at Colton
I think it's huge.
and
I
one
think
being
it's-
up there. I agree as well. I think it's something that we have thought when we purchasing the property, that would be the value in it, that it's just not gonna stay just open space once they, but in the agreement with the property owners at the time is we have to leave that bunker house for 3 years, and we're now down to 2. So, but there'll be a lot of discussion about how to get somewhere, and if it is a trailhead, it's not an, you know, overnight kind of project. It'll
Well, I
be a
think you
while.
rightfully linked it to Superior Town Center. Did you already say that
Yes.
in this explanation?
Yeah, I mean, that's, so one of the reasons we acquired Shan Shan was the value went up with it, with Town Center being across the street and that area being all developed, that became a more valuable resource that we wanted to maintain and have access out to all of the western open space there.
If we think it's a priority, can we continue or try to act on it, or do we need BOCO?
We purchased it
Involvement right now.
with BOCO, put some funds. I don't know that they would necessarily stop us from doing anything. I just don't know that they were interested in, you know, at the current time of funding
Right.
anything.
I'm wondering if we should add this to our first quarter, because I remember our meeting with the board last year. This actually got brought up, and we had a big discussion about potential naming contests or that sort of thing, interacting with the historical commission. It would definitely be good if we were able to, when we meet with them, talk about the next steps rather than rehashing that same thing.
That's, you just hit on the thing, next steps for Shan Shan.
Yeah.
Consider next steps for Shan Shan.
So instead of monitor progress, just be next steps for,
Yeah,
you
and
know,
I-
Shan, that Shan Shan.
and I don't think it's
One
something
being
that-
rename it something from Shan Shan.
Yeah,
I think is-
for sure.
And it's not something we need to say, this is what we need to do, here's steps A, B, and C. It's just something we could probably lay out and say, this is what we see for the future. Board, what do you think? Does this jive with your vision as well? And then we can collaborate from there. But we should definitely have a talk about it. That way we go into that board dinner prepared.
When is Town Center slated to be done?
20 years.
20 years? It'd be nice to have Shan Shan done before that, before 20 years.
Quick off-topic question. When is Boulder Valley Ice supposed to open?
Next spring sometime. Correct, Allison? It's a moving target.
Cool.
I'll tell you, when you come up 36, which I don't often come up, you know, it's really large and
It's huge.
I do it
It's-
every day, and you can't see the mountains anymore. It is just like, wow, that's a big building.
Yeah.
Aren't you glad at the wisdom of the town board for having them articulate the siding so it's not just one big galvanized metal
Yeah.
structure?
Yes.
Just a plug for the town board.
Good job.
But
On the whole Shan Shan thing, what happened with our naming, trails, all of that business?
I think that's what we need to talk about and have a plan for.
Okay.
Because nothing ever happened with it, I don't think.
No, we had mentioned something about approaching the historical
Yeah.
committee to discuss, there's a lot of history in that area with the depot and such. So I'd want to touch base with them before we even consider opening up to the public.
Yeah.
I
Yep.
agree. And other trails, do we still have interest in that, or
that's
do we
right.
want to let that die?
Other trails?
I forgot about that. So
Other spaces as
Yeah,
well.
what-
So some
Oh.
are named and some are not. So like you've got Coyote Ridge open space that's sort of named that, but not everything else is named officially, or it's just under the open space. Just has a sign that says open space.
Or it has no sign?
Or it has no sign. I think that was also part of our thoughts when we were talking about the marketing and community engagement, that we would open it up for naming. And I think when we met with the board and had dinner with them, they were open to that.
Mhm.
And also thought we should work with like the historical committee and groups like that,
And
sort of
ProStaff.
what they did with the founders or some of the park process to figure out what you're gonna call things.
I did bring back to the committee the procedures of how that was done, if you recall, and so we talked about it, but then it kind of dropped off.
I think we got involved in like National Trails Day and other things, and we're like,
Right.
we've got to just do all this work.
Yeah, it feels like something we don't want to drop, but it might not be a high priority.
Yeah.
It's also another thing to put on your list of ProStack things, because some of these are interior trails, some of them are clearly open space trails. So it does seem wise at your meeting, your dinner with the town board, to raise that broad issue and say, is there interest in having everything named? Because if you don't have it named, it's hard to put it on a map and hard to have web-based anything if it doesn't have a name. So just that general topic.
So if we don't want to address it right away, do we want to put it third quarter or something, or what are you guys thinking?
For the trail naming, I think we could put that down. I think it's something we would want to put on our list to bring up with the board during that dinner, during that time, again, to just see, and bring up with ProStack and the other, sort of when we identify those liaisons who might, then you'd have people to reach out to other groups and say, we're thinking about this. But I don't think we would work on it until.
So like ongoing?
You could put an A, like some of these things are done with subgroups under the ProStack, and then it would just be on your work plan to be approved.
Because we're going to come back with another draft of this, right?
Yes.
Next
Yeah, this
month.
is the original.
It seems to me like we need that next draft.
Yeah.
And some of these things will clarify themselves,
Yeah.
in terms of fleshing out. And
So, do we want to do that and move, just trying to be conscious of time?
Are there any other big rock items people want to add to the work plan that aren't there already, just so we don't lose track of it, and then we can just finesse it later?
So back to the marketing, web, whatever we call it, web marketing. I think we actually, if you guys also agree, we might actually want to look at our own website. I mean, people want to know about Superior Open Space Committee, but what do we do? I mean, we have some things here, but it's not very robust. I think we need to look at that as a marketing tool as well. So maybe we should evaluate what we want to have on our website, not just the mission and goals, but if people have input they want to give us, they can email it to whoever. I mean, right now we have contact and, Sandy and Allison as contacts, but, if people, it's not just email, it's like if you have questions about trails, if you have questions, just make it a little more robust and again, it's the town website, but we also have to think of it as a marketing for our group and what people can get out of our group than just.
We're developing the dinner agenda.
Yeah.
Hopefully it occurs quickly in 2016, early on, and that's a great subject too, because right now it's perfunctory. It's not intended to be, it's just one element of a large website, so.
So Allison, I just added those two down on the ongoing, but I don't know
Okay.
that they'll remain there, but just to sort of put
Well, what
them-
I'll do is I'll kind of put everything that I've written down and everything that you've written down, and I'll send it out with our notes, with the links to the other, all the other stuff we've been talking about. And then hopefully we can finalize it at the next meeting and get it submitted for approval.
Yeah, one of the reasons I say that is because, I've contacted the Boulder Open Space Committee, and they redirect me to ProStack here in Superior. I'm like, no. There's a separate committee in Superior for open space, so, even the surrounding towns around us don't even know that we exist, so.
How difficult is it to get on the board's calendar for that dinner?
We've made it a priority.
Is
With my first term, we made it a priority that we will meet with all the advisory committees and planning commission early in the first quarter. So
we don't
you're
need to
sort of
start?
on there.
Okay.
It's just a question of who comes first. So everybody wants first, and it usually matters on priorities. If something pressing is affecting a committee, they tend to be up top. So I do have a couple updates when you're done discussing what you're discussing.
So to Ken's point, were there any other items folks wanted us to add to the draft that's going to be coming back? Then we can have Sandy's updates, and then we have 5, 6, and 7 that are still on our agenda.
Oh, wow. Well, maybe you should do those, and then I'll do my update.
Okay. So 5 is our 2016 outdoor educational program. So in your packet, you had the programs that we've done in 2014 and 2015. Allison has done some surveys with folks afterwards, so we've got some more data that folks really rated either excellent or good, which was great. Down at the bottom are some things that Allison and I were talking about, potentially, like, do we keep the same exact programs that we have, or do we try to add some things? And I was saying some of the things, I did the Star Party, which was just under rec, but we had a presence there. And some of the night things, I think there's opportunities to have some things that are, more in the night. Because I know some of the Saturday morning things, folks, run into having sporting things going on in their families, things like that. So this is sort of what we've done. The Trails Day booth, we had a lot of people come through. The Jeff and Paige concert is always a hit. The Bug Hunt was a big hit. The Coyote presentations, I think they're useful, but I don't know that everyone attends them as much as we would like. So it might be maybe one of those, or at least a opportunity that we might want to switch something out without another area of Ashley's.
Also, one of the things Ashley spoke to me about was Coyote presentation. I was here for that. We do it in Town Hall, and it was on a Thursday night the last 2 years. So, and it's not really aimed towards children 11 and under. So it's on a work night, a school night, and kids can't come, little kids.
Yeah.
So, or younger kids. So one thing that she was talking about, if we wanted to do a weekend night, or if we wanted to switch this out with another type of program that had more interest or something new.
I think if it's geared towards kids, people want to learn about snakes. So maybe that snake guy that does the thing on Louisville or whatever, people are interested in what snakes they might encounter out in the trails and knowing how to do that. I know I was on the coyote hike and the bird walk, and many of us asked questions about snakes and that as well, because we were tromping through some high grass in the bird walk. And,
I love the idea of a snake event.
I
I'd
think
like
we
to
could
know
use
which
it
ones
too.
to worry
My
about.
wife wouldn't, but.
No, I would
your
like to know
boys
which
would. My
ones
boys
to
would,
worry
yeah.
about. It really
And what about the climate change, the NCAR guy? I don't know if anyone has interest still in that, but he's free.
Yes, I would agree.
I think the snake guy is also free.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I noticed that we have a lack of things going on between October, November, December. We have nothing going on in the fourth quarter in both the last 2 years.
They have National Bat Week in October. It's kind of cool.
Okay, that would be awesome.
The kids would love National Bat Week.
Yeah.
Does the snake guy bring snakes? Does anyone know?
Yes.
I would hope so.
And the
Yes, he
bat
does.
person brings bats?
That might be a hike out in
Well, I
Tonopah.
think the problem with having it in having National Bat Day in October is that bats are typically out at dusk in the summer. But
Right.
it's kind of neat to make it more of a non-scary Halloween
Yeah.
thing that's kind of neat. I'm not sure if you could get a bat or not.
So the snake guy could be in fourth quarter, and the NCAR guy could be in fourth quarter.
Yeah.
Because those are
And
inside.
if we could get anything on like hibernation or a migratory lecture or something that has to do with like seasonal.
We did the
Animals.
migratory birds this year in the Bird Walk number 2, which was in place of the zoo program from last year, was a migratory bird walk. The other thing, fourth quarter, we got to remember, we don't really have an indoor space. So we're reliant on the elements.
You can't
Yeah,
bring
we have
snakes and
fire
bring.
station.
Yeah.
We could do fire station.
No
We
snakes
could
in
have
here?
a vole seminar in the spring.
There you go.
God knows I've got a collection.
That's actually not a bad idea. I bet you that would be very well
attended.
received. Yeah.
How would you deal with?
Yeah.
Well, I see that on the listserv all the time. How do I get rid of?
Well, I think we know what the research topic is. What is the natural predator to the vole?
It is the coyote is one of them
The bull
Owls.
snakes.
The bull
Horned
snake.
owl, I would think.
Yeah. Before we write down, we actually might want to do the snakes early or mid-spring, because that's when they're really starting to come out, and that's where we probably have peak interest, and when it's probably the most applicable to everybody.
Does anybody know, is there any literature out there or a website that describes the wildlife in the Front Range? Because, for example, my neighborhood found a big snake. One person thought it was a bull snake, one thought it was a rattlesnake. It rattled, and then we knew what it was. And then, should we hit it with a shovel, or should we let it eat rabbits? Is there any literature or anything out there?
Yeah, so Boulder County has this cool little pamphlet that has it's not all of the wildlife and flora and fauna in the area, but quite a bit. The lady who presented this, I'm blanking on her name right now, but she talks about all this. I bet we could get her or somebody else from Boulder County to give a presentation about all the animals in the area as well.
That is so awesome.
Right?
That
How do
was
I get
Everybody
one?
wants to see it.
How do I get one?
that was the $4 one, right?
Yeah, those
That's-
are $4 normally, so they don't bring them to their large events where there's going to be lots of people, which is why we couldn't get any for
I
Chili
don't
Fest.
have a
Oh,
clue
yeah.
why anybody does a thing that's $4.
Yeah.
You don't have to plastic coat that
Mhm.
thing.
Like I grabbed this at the opening of Hodgson Harris.
Is that right?
and
I wonder
since-
if we could get approval just to make a copy and pop it up somewhere or
Yeah.
print it for
Yeah.
National Trails Day if the group wanted me to pursue that.
Yeah, no, that would be great.
That would be great.
Paper, a non-laminated copy. We'll give them props on the front. I don't mind doing
Well, we could
that,
leave
you
it
know?
exactly the way it is, right?
Yeah.
Could this go on a website, on our website?
If we get
Or-
permission.
Or
I
a
don't
link
see-
as well.
Probably
for-
a link.
It's the selection of white
A
units.
link.
They want total distribution, that's why I don't, I mean, that's their objectives, get it out far and wide, so you don't make it $4 per unit. I don't
Yeah.
understand that, but.
So Allison, as far as the educational programs, I think, we put in the budget to keep Ashley, so I think, the ones that she does, we might just swap out a couple, but when do we have to let her know her sort of set schedule for?
Well, I'll be working on her contract soon, so it would be great to have them finalized, at least what they are. I can work on the dates with her.
Yeah.
But if the group wants to drop something and maybe add something different for her to present, I mean, even the snakes, for example, that's the group that Ember and Louisville works with, their open space committee. So that might not even be necessarily something that would go on Ashley's plate, and we could save her for something else. That could be just a separate OSAC program.
Yeah.
Without Ashley's involvement, if you wanted to do it that way, or if you wanted her involvement, I mean, either or.
No, I think that's, I mean, I think if we can get it from somewhere else and use her involvement on other things.
Especially because a lot of this is free. I mean, I remember when the OSAB from Louisville came over and they showed us their volunteer presentations that they did throughout the year. They had like 20 or 30 things.
Yeah, it was crazy.
It was something ridiculous, and I think they said 3 of them they had to pay for. I mean, there's definitely a lot of stuff out there that we can get for free.
We just need to tap our own resources.
Yeah, so I would say let's definitely not add that to Ashley's pile.
Yeah.
Well,
And
it's
just.
nice to save her for other things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So is the real thing we're looking for out of this list is what do we want to drop, if anything, and what do we want to add?
Yeah, that was sort of.
Do we know exactly what other options are to add, or are we brainstorming what those are?
Brainstorming.
Yeah, so we were brainstorming adding here, and I don't know, I think that might be a question we have for Ashley. What other things on here that she has expertise in that we aren't currently tapping her for?
Can we do more than just bird migratory? Can we do all animals in the area migratory, or hibernation, or, I mean, there's. I mean,
Yeah, she mentioned even a wildflower walk, if you do it during
There's so many
blooming.
different
I mean,
kinds.
she is an expert at so many different things.
Yeah.
And I would assume if she wasn't, she would have the resources to create something.
Okay.
So can we add the bats and the snakes and the NCAR thing like we talked about? And right now?
Yeah.
Is
Mhm.
everyone
Yeah, I
on
think
board
we
with
can,
that?
I
Okay.
think we can add those, and I think your point is just trying to figure out, like, maybe the NCAR is definitely in the fall.
Winter.
The winter, the snake eye, I think your thing is right, even though we have, do it in the fall, it's better in the spring,
Right.
because people are gonna be encountering them
Right.
shortly thereafter.
And bats in October.
And
also
bats
said.
in October.
Cool.
That's at Halloween.
And Ashley actually knows a director of a national bat conservancy group, which I think is really cool.
Can we,
Of course.
can we ask, can we ask her just to propose any other
Okay.
topics that she thinks would be like great or novel or anything like that? I mean, we could brainstorm, but man, she is still the expert, and she could give us ideas or a list. That would definitely go a long way as well.
Well, and that's what I kind of did underneath this STAR 2015 all rated excellent or good was I spoke with her last week and she said, hey, she could do a species specific, non-bird,
Okay.
and coyote, other animals like bears, if we wanted to do bears, like kind of came on the radar this year.
Yeah.
Snakes, which we did those wildlife updates, her and I don't know if you noticed those going
yeah.
out. We did
Yeah.
those. Night hikes, which
Yeah.
Patricia was interested in, and that's how we kind of talked about the bats, because the star parties kind of went over really well, and it's neat for
Well, I
kids to
think-
go out at night. It's different.
Yeah, it's different, and I think it's, it was fun to have something to look forward to in the evening,
Yeah.
you know, where a lot of the Saturday morning stuff, like I said, runs into
I
a
think-
number of other things.
I think the night hike is definitely something we want to add. I mean, that's
Yeah.
so different. You don't get a lot of opportunities to
Who
have an
wouldn't
expert
want to
out
hike at
there.
night?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So these were her realm of suggestions that I kind of already spoke with her about,
Yeah.
just trying to be
Great.
proactive to get us.
And then
going.
Sandy's Vole thing in the spring.
I need help.
Yeah.
Me too.
I think a number of other people, it's the same thing, that people would be like, oh, it's like I said, those are some of the things that you see people
I
always
think it would
asking
be-
about, like I have a
One,
Vole.
I think it would be just sort of
Hilarious.
innovative, a topic for OSAC to
Yeah.
put on.
Yep.
You know, it's, you know, so.
And our wildlife updates, I mean, that's something that the committee could also help with, especially sending me, hey, you know, this is, voles are going on. I mean, we saw that on
Well, and
the,
how they get in your house,
Right.
what to do when they get in your house and build a nest.
Mhm.
You know, another thing is field mice. You know, a lot of homeowners have voles and field mice.
Yep.
Have trouble with field mice getting into houses, et cetera. We discovered our drywall in our garage didn't have that expandable foam junk. And some field mice got into our storeroom, which meant all that. Costco food got thrown out. I'm like, even if they didn't get into it, I'm like, it's out of here.
well, in those wildlife updates, like I try to keep a pulse on what's going on in the community through the CAC exchanges, and then, or letters that we get, because, you know, if someone has a problem, they can call us, and then we can direct them to Ashley, and then we know how the outcome of what happens. And then I've been trying to, like this year for the first time, trying to do these wildlife updates just to inform the community on, hey, this is what's going on, this is what you can do, you know.
Here it's voles, rabbits, field mice, and other pesky critters. That's.
That could be the comment. That
We
could be
did
the title.
Flies,
Spiders, the wolf
spiders.
spiders. that-
I am telling you though, we had a pre-roll jumping mouse.
You
at ours.
did.
Yes, it was exactly,
I hope you didn't injure it.
nope.
No.
He's off in the field, very happy.
Okay.
Great.
I'm not sure I would notice the difference except maybe those ears.
You can tell by their hind legs.
Yeah, their hind
Oh,
legs
okay.
are
Pretty
big.
Okay.
They're like
interesting.
jackrabbits.
Okay.
So if there's nothing else to add to the education program, we can move on to the trail plan and discussing. So we did our trail plan and got that all finalized, but now this was the discussing of, do we want to use open space funding to expedite trail building?
And just real quick, we actually might want to flip-flop number 6 and 7. I didn't realize that when we were making the agenda, but where we where we landed last month was we wanted to make a decision on the ridge first about whether we wanted to move forward with that. That way we knew whether we were going to try to commit some money up front that would be leaving our coffers. So we were going to discuss two scenarios, a scenario where we bought the ridge and a scenario where we didn't buy the ridge. So do we want to talk about the ridge real quick to see if there's
Sure.
any interest still?
So yes, we can flip that, make number 7 do that first. So I wasn't here unfortunately last month. I had to travel for work, but I had gone up and looked at the Ridge property, you know, just and reread some of the things that we had put out, and I'm not sure that it's worth our while to pursue it at this point. That's sort of my take on it.
Yeah.
Well, particularly in light of what Sandy sent us with the fencing and such, that was a,
Barbed wire.
Barb-
does
yeah.
remain,
Must remain as a.
as a terrorist precaution. yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
because they cannot throw anything over the barbed wire.
Right,
Yes.
right.
To contaminate the
Inconceivable.
Well, no, all that security up there would stop them from doing that.
Yeah. So, yeah, so that would have to remain. I'm just not sure that it was something we'd want to pursue at this point,
No.
from my perspective, but.
I'm not sure what the gain would be.
Our initial thought, or a thought last month, was if we could do something with that fence, there could be possible trail connections from right there to the trail that's on the other side of that lake or reservoir. But that's not really possible with that fence there, so
Yeah.
it takes away.
So it
the
almost,
benefit.
it almost is getting to the point, since the fence has to be there for security, like, we really don't necessarily want people up there
Mhm.
walking around and doing things, right?
Yeah.
Like, we sort of want to direct people away from it and use other connections.
So is everybody okay with taking no action on this at this time?
Mm-hmm.
It pains me, but yes.
All right, rich property done.
Ridge property done, so nothing we need to do there. So then, sort of, that goes back to the trail plan. So for newer members, we have our open space fund that's funded by sales tax in the town. And one of the things that we've been discussing the last few months is, should we use some of those funds to expedite? We were looking at this trail plan and saying, oh, you know, should we try to do something and move things up? Did the board vote about the loan
Yes.
that Matt came and discussed, just to bring
Yes.
everybody up to speed on that?
Last meeting of October, that's the one meeting I missed, but it was voted on, and the budget was approved, and the budget had in it that loan, and it also had $200,000 of open space money for trails. So the
200 or
question-
250?
Is it 200 or 2?
I think it was 250
Okay.
was what we had talked about at
Okay.
prior meetings.
Whatever that number was that was specified, it was not changed in any way.
Okay.
So your discussion, as I recalled it, was, do you want to spend more than that to
Mhm.
further jumpstart?
Yes. So the loan amount was 3 million? 2 million. The loan amount's 2 million, so they're gonna take a loan from the open space fund and build the El Dorado Park parcel next to the El Dorado School, but then that will be paid back,
In 2 years.
in
2 or 3, that.
2 years?
Gosh, is it in 2 or 3 years.
2 or 3 years with whatever the standard interest rate was or something, so there'll be a little bit of interest. So we currently, at the end of the year, will have 5 million in there, so 2 is coming off for the loan. 250,000 is coming off just to do sort of the trail maintenance that we worked out with ProStack, or went to the board, and how that will get. And then this is sort of, do we want to spend anything in addition to that? And we pull in 400,
I think it was
About
500.
$500,000
$500,000 each year
in
gets
sales
added in.
tax.
Now,
In sales.
the one thing we're also instructed was, even though we have 2 million leaving our coffers, don't take that into consideration, because even if a opportunity arises, we can get funding for that
Right.
Yes.
through other
I
mechanisms.
would view it as $5 million.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's not your concern that that loan's in place.
Yep.
If the opportunity came, that would be, funds would be restored.
Yeah.
So our sort of largest sort of acquisitions that have been looked at is Level 3, which at the time Matt quoted us that 9 million, I think they were valuing it at, or 11 million. So already, if we get into something with that, there'll have to be some type of financing if that is a true number or not. That's sort of one of those. The Ridge property was one. We've just eliminated that as an upcoming thing that we would want. The Zaharias property, we feel is overpriced at this point.
Which one is that?
That's the one that is on the left side of the reservoir,
Off of
off of 88.
Okay.
Like right before you open the bridge.
Right.
Understood.
Yeah.
What is the price of that? What's the last one?
Sandy, was it $1 million an acre?
$1 million, the Zaharias is how much of,
I don't have, I really don't recall, but it's,
it's priced out
Out
of
of the
what?
ballpark.
Yeah,
It
it's
was-
out of,
I think it was close to $1 million an acre.
yeah.
How
and
many
then-
acres is it? Do you have any idea?
23.5, roughly.
Ouch. Yeah, so we weren't,
Their price per acre was ridiculous,
yeah,
just way outside.
way outside. And then, so I'm not sure that, you know, with the exception of something.
Bojack, right?
And Bojack.
And Bojack, anything sort of
Do you know if
moving
they're
with
not-
level
they're not-
3, that we're
they're not-
really looking at any acquisitions in the near-term future of, I'd say, the next 12 months.
What about the development of the Shan Shan Trailhead? Are we going to be having to foot that bill as well, or is that something we are going to be trying to negotiate with Boulder County, or I have no idea what
We
we
would-
have to put into that.
I guess we would have to gauge the interest of Boulder County or something.
I think for funding, those are, one, we would probably have to, I mean, just thinking of it, we would probably put some of it, we'd probably ask Allison to look for a grant, because she's very good at that. We'd say, "Allison, why don't
Thanks
you
for
work-"
volunteering for that, Allison.
Allison's always good for, you know, I mean, I think we would look at whatever those
Grant
grant monies.
Just finished one.
Yes, but you're very good at it. So it would just, and I think we would look at even the town, what would come out of another part of the budget. I don't know that we would finance
Right.
it all.
You know, as Matt Magley told you, the town manager, when he sat here, so much of this has been financed out of the general fund, the conservation reserve, or whatever it's called, and not come out of open space money historically. So if the project has enough priority, the funds will be found. So I would not encumber this particular discussion, although what other things could happen. We've been told that the big one, level 3, that because of executive changes in the executive management, that it's just not conceivable something's going to happen on that in the near term. You know, that's as definitive as a statement that's been made since in the 5 years I've served as a trustee. So that does not look in the offing, which probably means it'll just break loose next year.
Yeah.
But, so the.
That seems to be how they happen, all of a sudden.
Yeah,
It's-
because the town's been working on that for more than a decade. You know, it's not a new priority. So the question is, in the meantime, are there trail projects that are high enough and important enough to your committee that you want to jumpstart?
Can I ask one question? Does anyone know how much a trailhead costs?
Well, we have experience with that because of Colton
Mhm.
Trailhead.
Depends on how big it is.
Yeah.
What did Colton cost?
You'd have to get that number. But that
I
was a
have that number
shared.
somewhere.
Yeah, that was a huge.
We want that number.
Yeah. And the implications there were pretty profound for the town because that's when that roundabout came in and all that kind of stuff.
So where we ended up last time was, you know, should we get a price per linear foot for trails? You know, should we see how much each of our priorities is going to cost? I think we landed on, let's just choose a dollar amount, and I think we were unanimous that we wanted to spend more. It was just a question on how much. And we were going to do that by email, and I think, unless I was delinquent, I don't know if that happened.
No, we didn't talk about that via email.
And so maybe in the interest of time, we do that this month, some sort of email of this range. Do you
Can we do that
vote on
today?
it, or-
Instead of
I
via
don't know
email?
that we have to go to email. I just wonder if we just do it, if people have a sort of gut feeling of what they think. I'm just looking at, these were sort of the estimated costs. So they sort of range anywhere from, you know, little ones of like 7,000 to the big ones are, you know, 200,000, right?
But I
Like,
think
Are
we
you
were
looking at our actual trail plan, or what are the estimates from?
This was from the 2015 budget process, so this was the estimates from that trail that I just pulled out of here, but we might have something a little closer, but these were, you know, but if we looked at, say, you know, like that fire station park west toward, and along McCaslin, that was estimated at 52,000, so they kind of.
Right, but last month we brought up like our top, I don't know how many was it? that we looked at, and
Five, yeah.
what was that figure, adding 20% for estimation?
I think it was $250,000, something like that, or 200.
400.
But
I
some
think
of
it might be
those
close-
might
I
be
think it might be closer
accomplished
to
in
4.
the 250 that's been approved. The specific trails that are in that 250, to my knowledge, have not been assigned as to what those are going to be, and they may well be something on your list already. So I think Matt's general approach is meritorious in that you could put the hypothetical out there. If we were to consider authorizing an additional X to be spent, what, I don't know that do you care what trails that would be? Or do you care simply that it's a town priority for a trail? And you will support the town's decision-making on how that additional X component, X increment would be spent?
So I think from the discussions that we've had in the past, and folks can weigh in again, is the one thing we wanted to avoid that the open space fund became the rainy day
Right.
fund. So we were very clear. I don't necessarily think we would say, oh, it would only have to be a trail on open space, but it had to be sort of a trail. It had to be in kind of that connection or that purview. Like we wanted
Right.
to make sure it wasn't going to go off and just be, oh, we've dropped 100,000 or 200,000 into the budget for anything. Like
Right.
we were clear on that. I don't know if folks have more feelings that we really do want to say, well, if we put in the 200,000, we want to identify the trails. My one concern with that is if we say that, I think then any trails we want would come out of that original money, because they would just say, let it.
Why wouldn't we just use our priority list that we spent all this time on?
Yep.
I mean, those are our trails that we're
Because it
going.
eventually, this is the yin and yang of this thing. It eventually is a town board decision, how funds are spent. Open Space recommends a course of action, and the town board approves a course of action. So that's just how it is. I mean, when you recommended Shan Shan, the town board still had to approve Shan Shan. So you've got recommendation power. So I do think it's reasonable to see what trails are funded for 2016. And then,
Well, didn't you just say that we
Huh?
don't have specific trails?
not that I know of.
So,
I think, and if you take a look at ProStack's notes, that they did identify specific trails to be.
Well, so did you.
Right, so did we.
Yeah,
So-
But the board hasn't said which ones,
Right.
or I don't know if it's if the board says that, or if they just turn to.
Typically, staff
pro-
puts them
to-
forth.
Yeah.
And then usually the town board goes with staff recommendations.
Mhm.
And the town board doesn't get that bent out of shape of where it came from. It's a town-wide priority. That's what the town board cares about. And I think that's the best policy. It doesn't matter who's making it, what on the town's radar is most important. And that's what the town considers. But perhaps you want to see how that shakes loose as to what trails are funded, and then come forth and say, we would be willing to do this if such and such could be made a priority. I don't know. We're treading new ground here, so.
Yeah.
my concern is if we're just going to try to specify an amount, which I was definitely in favor for initially, but the more I think about it, I feel like we're putting the the cart before the horse.
I want to know what the.
We need a quote. I think we need to have an idea of, we want to try to get trails X, Y, and Z done this year.
Knowing the amount is.
We need to put a quote out there. That way we can get the economies of scale with doing multiple trails by specific vendors and that sort of thing. I mean, it all has to kind of
Well, I
happen in
think you guys need to
conjunction.
have a priority. So if your
Right.
priority is already being funded in 2016, that's one thing. But if your priorities are not being funded in 2016 and you want to see a particular priority be funded, you can put that priority out there to the board and say, we would like this priority to be funded, and we're willing to recommend X. That sounds like an approach. I don't know that it's, you know, we haven't hashed this out.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I might have just blanked on it. When did you say that the town staff normally gets the recommendations for trails to you by?
You know, I'm gonna meet with Matt anyway tomorrow. I'm gonna ask him if he's got specific ones in mind. Staff may have something more in mind than I'm aware.
Well, and also if we think about when he was here, that we could add on and request more at any time, and so
Right.
there wasn't really
I mean, I can't speak for everybody else up here, but my point of view is I'd rather get it going. I mean, we want to do
I
something
want
that
to see
helps.
trails 1 through 7 done.
Yeah, I mean, I
Bottom
think,
line.
yeah, I mean, I think from our discussions of having this, part of it has been that, well, one, we were looking at, we've been accumulating this fund and and the parcels are slowly, have been acquired now that we can or want to acquire, and now it's just, do we just sit and grow the fund and it's, you know, I think we were,
Yeah.
or we were looking at this 5-year trail plan saying, you know, if we just put a little extra priorities 1 through 7,
I mean,
could get
Right, but that
done.
may
I think
not
the-
happen unless we say, we want 1 through 7.
And we have to
What do
get a
we need
quote
to
for
do
that.
to get
And
it?
I think the town would probably be behind it. We've been talking about a 5-year trail plan for 5 years, or whatever it's
Yeah.
been, and not a lot has happened, so I'd like
Yeah.
to get out.
Yeah, I mean, I think,
So does somebody have that, Trish, did you have it?
do we have it online
Can
too?
you
Because I
add-
have it,
can
but
you
this
add
isn't the
1%
updated.
Plus 20%,
Um,
what does it total?
Hold on. Oh, take this back, yeah. We definitely have it,
Yeah, I've got one.
because we had our 5-year, but mine are the marked up copies, you know?
Yeah, I
Move
have so
fast,
many
dude.
marked up copies. It's just-
Well, I was looking and you just said what was H, and I'm like, well, this
Yeah.
one's not the H, this is the number ones that Fiona was saying.
Yeah.
What was H? Well, I
Make
don't know.
sure
I
you
have
date
it. I should date it, I should move them.
Oh, did we? Oh, wait, this is the oldest one. Hold on.
We've been doing this for a while, Joel.
I must find, I'm gonna have to, give me a sec.
Yep. And while we're waiting for Allison to do that, I know Joel announced that he was here, but Joel's our newest member, for those of you guys who didn't put that together.
So I just added it all up. Our top 7 with a, oops, hold on.
If you just highlight all the columns, it'll automatically add it above.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Our top 7 with 20% increase puts us at about 385,000.
With the 20%.
Are you looking at the
That's-
same list
that
we are?
adds
Yeah.
all those, and it's 434 without 20%.
I'm evidently looking at an
About
outdated
550
list.
Yeah.
Total.
Yeah.
Is that the most updated?
That is yeah, I'm looking at a wrong list.
Okay.
Never mind.
Yep, so that's the most updated, so that's 400. So some percentage of the 200,000 might cover
Yep,
some
there
percentage
may be
of
some
that.
overlap.
So to reasonably do that, are we saying, so what's the 20% on that?
520.
520, so,
But there's going to be so overlap, so roughly 500,000.
I was gonna say, if we bumped it up to double.
yeah. So, you know, what's folks' thoughts on that? That's generally what we take in a year. We have 5 million in there. We could say, we would recommend, if we could get the top 7, that OSAC would recommend releasing $500,000 to trail
Well-
building or maintenance, or, you know,
If we can get the top 7 and if it's within the $500 or less $1,000.
I'm not even sure we would need to add that. I mean, if we can get the top 7 and hit 600, I'd be willing to discuss going up to
Yeah.
600. I'm not
Yeah.
sure. I mean,
We have 5 now.
we just need to know what we're talking about. We need to get to the point where we have solid numbers. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I'm,
Well, that's the key point.
yeah.
Well, and the chances that we build 7 trails in a year are slim to none, right?
Exactly.
So
Very
why not just make the proposal, let's spend 500,000, our priorities 1 through 7, and we might get 1 through 3 in reality? And at least get the ball rolling?
Well, it should be, but the 500 is in addition to the 200. I just want to say that. It's, so in reality, then we're saying to the town, you have 700,000 to
Or
build.
go about the other way, say we want priority is 1 through 7 accomplished as soon as possible. What will that take?
I
Yes.
prefer that approach, instead of just dishing out the cash and letting it go towards some other trails that are 25 on our list.
So how would we word that recommendation? So is it that open space is recommending that we get these, fast track these 7 and is willing to release funds, or recommending releasing funds from the open space fund?
And would consider releasing funds from the open space account if those could be made a town priority. Would consider recommending the release of those funds, if those trails were a priority.
So are we stating this as a recommendation to the board, that we recommend the board consider fast-tracking these 7? Okay.
And those went to the board last month, right? These?
Yes.
Yes.
But understand, when a document like this goes to the board, there's little chance that it's going to be read in the detail that you've considered it.
Yes, oh, yes, no, we definitely
Might,
understand that.
someone might want to attend the meeting?
So this would be.
What this would come to our attention in is your minutes. Okay, so timely turnaround of minutes is very important. If it takes 2 months to turn around minutes, then it's gonna, so.
No, Allison,
it would
Ken and
not-
I have got that down now, I think.
I bug.
Okay.
We move
So,
on those.
Also, so I would say that one of your leadership people, one of the 2 of you should probably come before the board, putting that forth in public comment. At
So-
the December, at the November, a week from tonight is the first board meeting after this meeting.
So that
Or
means
early
by
December.
Friday, you would need to get this in,
Wednesday.
this coming Wednesday, so you'd have to type them up.
You mean like 2 days from now?
Yeah.
You know, Or you could choose to do it at the December 7th meeting.
What's the
See, that's the
December?
thing for us, is that if we don't have our notes turned around by
Mhm.
Wednesday, then they go into the next one.
Yep.
I'm fine talking, but I'm not here next Wednesday. I'm in Mexico.
So Monday is the 23rd, right?
Allison, does anything, though, prohibit
Yes,
somebody
23rd.
from coming to a meeting and sort of giving the preliminary on it?
No. No.
Even if the notes aren't together? I mean, you can say the committee and speak for the committee.
Yeah,
I mean,
I've
we
done
can
that
have the
before. I
notes
did.
together. It's-
Well, no, we can definitely have it. Allison turns them around pretty
Oh, yeah.
quickly. Can I
We'll get through them.
And you
get to
guys
them?
edit and
Yeah.
send it back.
Would you
So
mind
I
just-
can
oh,
commit to
go ahead,
being
Trish.
here next Monday, if we make it the other one's December 7th, right?
It would be.
It would be.
December, it's on Mondays, right?
It's
Yeah.
December
December
8th.
I'm looking at the
Seventh.
calendar.
Oh, you're right.
It's
Yep,
this
7th.
Wednesday, and then
Right,
it's
right.
next.
Is Monday, the second Monday in December, December 7th?
I thought it was the,
14th is the
It
second
can't be the
Monday.
7th.
It's the
I thought it was the
14th.
14th, and that's the
14th.
only meeting in December.
So,
We don't want to wait.
we don't want to wait for that, but I could commit to
Okay.
being.
Or
to
thank
both
you,
of
yeah.
those.
Allison, would you mind just restating it?
Restating what we've,
Sure, I have, open space recommends that the top 7 trails on the committee's 5-year trails plan. Oh, hold on.
You have a bigger screen.
Yeah, I do. It was on the committee's 5-year trails plan. And then I have where Sandy recommends releasing funds and would consider recommending the release of those funds from the open space account if those can be made a town priority. So, I mean, we could wordsmith it, but I mean, is that the basic gist of?
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah,
gist.
I think
We
that's
can-
the gist, yeah.
Okay. And we could go back and forth.
Does anybody dissent on that, who feels strongly that we shouldn't look at, trying to fast track some of this
Do you want
maintenance
to add
work?
a timeframe, could be made a priority for 2016?
Mhm.
Yeah,
For
for
2016.
2016, yeah.
That's a good idea.
Because we could, I mean, even if they don't necessarily all get built in, I mean, if they're sort of mapped out, bidded out, I mean, just so I know
They're
this
in
for.
the queue.
Well, they're in the queue, I just know from the other trail, the weather affects how quickly you can build some of these, some of the,
Yeah.
But-
I mean, as long as they're started.
Yeah, they're started
Along
in-
the way.
One interesting thing that came up this past week is we have, we had interpretive signs near Community Park behind Floor, and they had like an interpretive loop. So these signs are from the old district, and they are all deteriorated and unreadable. So one thing the group might want to consider putting on their work plan for a trail enhancement project is to maybe work with Ashley and come up with some new interpretive signs for educational purposes along this trail.
So just to be clear, you're talking about the ones that you walk up and say, coyotes live behind here. This is
Or-
what you should do, or
This type of
birds, or
flower.
this type of flower,
Sure.
or this type of, okay.
Whatever the group would like
Yeah.
to, if on this schedule, someone wanted to work with Ashley, our wildlife ecologist, on maybe revamping these signs,
Who does that? Where are you talking about? Are these open space trails or
They-
interior?
Well, they're interior, but it's kind of a native area. And so Community Park, there's an arm that kind of goes up behind Floor, I guess is the name of the street. Is
It's
it?
just to the east of Indiana.
Yeah, just east of Indiana.
And so there's this
Yeah.
loop back in there that had these interpretive signs that have just deteriorated, and we're having to take them all out.
Yeah.
But it kind of fits with the group's educational, initiative.
Yeah.
It does, but do they get used? Do you know?
I don't know. It might be
Well,
not
something.
sure how you could
Historical
count that.
Commission
I run by 'em
surely
every day.
spends a lot of money
Do you
putting
read
them up.
I've read them.
Yeah, the
I've read them,
Historical
I
Commission
definitely
does.
have read them, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I think if they're visible, people will read them.
Some.
Yeah, it's just.
Well, no, but I think
something
it
that
kind of
came
ties
up.
with some of this other stuff that we were talking about with Ashley, like, if we get the snake person in, do we get some of those, you're entering an area where rattlesnakes, might choose to nest, or you're entering,
That's actually why I read them. 'Cause one of the signs actually describes the way the creek down there changes its course over time. But if you're just running by real quick, it looks like they have a picture of a snake on there. I'm like, ooh, rattlesnake? Oh, creeks. All right, cool. I don't have to watch my step right now.
They're really old signs, and they're just,
Mhm.
it's interesting because I don't think we have that many trails that have educational signage like that in
Mhm.
town. It's just an idea because we had these signs coming down and they were sitting in our office.
Nice. Well, I definitely think it falls under that kind of education
Mhm.
pieces that we're looking at. Further discussion on this item? Okay, so Allison, if you can turn them around, I'll commit to being here Monday night.
And I'll put my words
Sandy
in,
will
too.
keep me honest and remind me of what I forget. Anyone else is more than welcome to come and join me, if you like. That was the end of what we had on our agenda, but before we adjourn, is there anything that somebody wants to, oh, that's right, Sandy wanted to give us an update.
A resident who happens to be a member of ProStack has brought to our attention the trail that is proposed behind the new Remington housing development
So
in
over
original
here?
town. The town bought for, I think, slightly more than $1 million, that open space between the creek, between Coal Creek and Remington. And there were plans in the approved PD to cross that in some manner. And her point in bringing it forth is that it looks like it's being crossed in a manner that was not approved. And so that is being checked out as we speak, but it dawned on both of us at that time, that trail is nowhere on ProStack's trail plan or on OSAC's trail plan. It's as if it doesn't exist.
I was gonna say,
So
it's
that's going to have to
news
be
me that
added.
There's a trail.
Yeah, it's this, it was put in the development plans.
So
and-
the development plans of Remington? Is
Yes.
that what- Okay.
And
So
the,
Remington's not footing the bill for that?
Huh?
That's, the Remington is not footing the bill on that
I
one?
believe they are.
They are.
They are connecting it, but the question is the manner in which it crosses that open space. And, it's a long, narrow piece, so does it go the length or does it go the width? That kind of thing. And so that's being checked out. But I just wanted to make you guys aware of this because that, in fact, is on open space. And so it'll have to show up on some plans.
Would it be possible to put that on our next month agenda, just to get a look at that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's actually, I don't know, it was officially added to ProStack's agenda, but she was trying to get it on there because she's a member of that, and she's concerned about it. So you might find it in the ProStack notes if it's
I think
added.
there was something added to their agenda
Yeah.
today, so
Yeah.
that's probably.
Yeah, that's
I haven't
probably
looked
it.
at it. Just so folks know, we have been sending our agenda to ProStack's
Right.
leadership and notes, and they are reciprocating and sending their agenda to Ken and I
Right.
and notes.
I'm actually not getting any of it.
It's
It's
Oh,
just
just-
you.
Oh, sorry.
Going to the chairs and.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Did we say you at some point? Sorry. But
I
I'll
think
look
the
at it.
initial thought was to do
Yeah.
chair and vice chair, but it just kind of fell out. There's just chair, I think.
Okay, well, I'll take a look at it.
And then the second item is School Parcel Park. There was a presentation on it at the last meeting's work session. It was tweaked further. And one of the exciting things I wanted to present to you guys was the concept of integrating wildflowers in that design. As I've already told you, south of Colton has a lot of rough natural passages. And so the recommendation came forth that can we integrate wildflowers in a really cool fashion that, every spring we can have wildflowers of some sort pop up, and everybody really loved that idea. So they are going to be incorporated.
Cool.
Cool.
That's all.
Thank you, Sandy. Was there any other agenda items that anybody wanted to bring up?
I may just ask every month if we could have an update on Town Center Park 1 and Park 2, if there's any changes, just so we don't fall off the radar. Is that doable?
Yeah, we can add it to the, we have Town Center as a look ahead every month, so we can add it, especially Park 1 and 2.
Did everybody get my email showing you how to look at agendas for town board, ProStack, how to get online?
And you get them. We send them to every committee
If
member.
you signed up.
Yeah.
And I showed
Yeah.
also how to sign up for so they'll send them right to your inbox too. And if anybody had a problem with that, feel free to email me and I can make sure to help you to
And
get
if
you on those
I
lists.
really recommend that, as advisory committee members, if you would just scan the agenda every time you get one. You don't have to read the 300 pages that are attached, but just scan the agenda and then go to page 89 or page 116 or whatever that's associated with that agenda item. Because you may want to run for the board at some point.
And it may not even be scanning for that page, because if you see that page, you can also go onto the video and just click that item number, and you, if you're really interested in that discussion, you know, you can listen to that town center. I listened to it today so I could tell you about it, but of course mine is so much more condensed and abbreviated than an hour and a half. So if you're really interested in it, you could watch and see everything that was said.
It is great that they're all online now and you can just redo them, but sometimes it's just finding that extra
Time.
hour in the week to do that.
Time.
Yeah, and I think we probably should all be more diligent about it, and I feel like we've been blindsided in the past by not knowing what's going on, and then all of a sudden, oh my gosh, this big
Well, they
change, and
come
we're
up-
behind.
Well, they come up, and then, obviously, I think that's part of what we'll discuss in January is those roles and being volunteers, is that some of it just times out, you know, it comes to the board after we've already met for the month officially, so it's just some of these things fall in, like you said, they come up quickly, and you say, what? Where did that come from? So I don't always know the drivers of why something moves up faster up the list or not. Who gets to make those calls? If it's the board asking for that agenda item.
Good luck
or-
figuring it out.
I think we're all in the same boat of trying to do that. So with that, if there's nothing else, we'll adjourn. Just, again, the thing's on and still recording us in the room until 9:30.
Better turn this off.
That's a long meeting from 6:30. We had a lot, but.
Thanks for braving the weather, everybody.